Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more notable names in African American history. Again, this one's late. Sorry, took me a while just getting everything set. But anyway, today we are looking at Huey P. Newton. And this is the information from his biography page, biography.com. Huey P. Newton was an activist and founded the Black Panther Party with Bobby Seale in 1966. In 66, he and Bobby Seale founded the left-wing Black Panther Party for self-defense in Oakland, California. The organization was central to Black Power movement, making headlines with its controversial rhetoric and militaristic style. Newton faced a number of criminal charges over the years, as did many of the activists, no matter who they were, because cops and FBI wouldn't let them just, make clear their point. And at one point fled to Cuba before returning to the U.S., earning his doctorate. Struggling with drug and alcohol addiction in his later years, he was shot to death in 1989 at age 47. He was born on February the 17th, 1942, in Monroe, Louisiana. And he was the youngest of 7 siblings. And he and his family moved to Oakland, California when Huey was still a toddler, so 2, 3, something like that. Although later stating he was closer to his family, the youngster had a difficult time early in life, which was reflected in highly erratic behavior at school and on the streets. As a teenager, he faced multiple suspensions and run-ins with the law, but began to take his education seriously after his older brother Melvin earned a master's degree in social work. Although Huey graduated high school in 1959, he was considered barely literate. He nonetheless became his own teacher, learning to read by himself. In the mid-1960s, Huey decided to pursue his education at Merritt College, during which time he received a months-long prison sentence for a knife assault and later attended the University of San Francisco School of Law. Merritt College is where Newton would meet fellow co-founder of the Black Panthers, Bobby Seale. The two were briefly involved in political groups at the school before they set out to create one of their own. In 1966, they called their group the Black Panther Party for self-defense. Unlike many of the other social and political organizers of the time, they took a more militant stance to the plight of the black communities in America. A famous photograph shows Newton, the group's Minister of Defense, holding a gun in one hand and a spear in the other. The group set forth its political goals in the document titled the 10-Point Program, which called for better housing, jobs, education for black Americans. It also called for an end to economic exploitation of black communities along the military with military exemption. So, nothing too crazy. Again, but they were seen as radicals because they wanted things that were common sense. I want this for all people. Better housing, better jobs, better education. Shouldn't be economically exploited in any communities. And honestly, I think military exemption's fine. The military no longer does a draft. It should be whoever wants to be in the military. The organization wasn't afraid to punctuate its message with dramatic appearances. For example, to protest a gun bill in 1967, members of the Panthers entered the California legislature armed. Newton wasn't actually present at the demonstration, but the action was a shocking one that made news across the country, and Newton emerged as a leading figure in the black militant movement. The Panthers wanted to improve life in black communities and took a stance against police brutality in urban neighborhoods by mostly white cops. Members of the group would go to arrest in progress and watch for abuse. The Panthers ultimately clashed with police several times, and the party's treasurer, Bobby Hutton, was killed while still a teenager during one of these conflicts in 1968. Newton himself was arrested the previous year for allegedly killing an Oakland police officer during a traffic stop. He was later convicted of voluntary manslaughter and sentenced to 2 to 15 years in prison. But public pressure, free Huey, became a popular slogan of the day. Helped Huey Newton's case. He was freed in 1970 after an appeals process deemed that incorrect deliberation procedures had been implemented during the trial. In the 70s, Newton claimed to take the Panthers in a direction that emphasized democratic socialism, aimed to take them in that direction, community interconnectedness, and services for the poor, including free lunch programs and urban clinics. But the Panthers began to fall apart due to factionalism and later allegations surfacing that the FBI under Hoover was clandestinely involved in the organization's unraveling. Remember, Hoover also apparently had a huge file on Martin Luther King Jr. So this is what I'm saying. They did not care what your tactics was. They just didn't like you pushing for rights. Hoover was an evil, evil person. Or at least horribly paranoid. Key members left while Newton and Eldridge Cleaver, the party's Minister of Information, split ways. By mid-decade, Newton faced more criminal charges when he was accused of murdering a 17-year-old sex worker and assaulting a tailor. To avoid prosecution, he fled to Cuba in 1974, but returned to the U.S. 3 years later. Murder case was eventually dismissed after 2 trials ended with deadlocked juries. The Taylor's refusal to testify in court brought an end to the assault charges. For later years and death, even with his legal troubles, Newton returned to school, earning his doctorate in social philosophy from the University of California, Santa Cruz in 1980. In his final years, however, he suffered from a major drug and alcohol problems that faced more prison time for weapons possession, financial misappropriations, and parole violations. The once popular revolutionary died on August the 22nd, 1989, in Oakland, California, after being shot on the street. Newton was 47 years of age. But yeah, they give some information on him and stuff. But yeah, you know, he was went after just like Martin Luther King, as if they were both the same potential danger. Here's from the archives.gov. This is supposedly the famous picture, they talk about him with a gun in one hand and a spear in the other. Um, okay, they don't seem to have too big of an entry on them. We'll read this. Born in Monroe, Louisiana, his parents moved to Oakland, California during Newton's childhood. He graduated from high school without having acquired literacy, but he later taught himself to read. He attended a variety of schools, including Merritt College, before eventually earning a bachelor's degree and a PhD from the University of California at Santa Cruz. During his tenure at Merritt College, Newton joined the Afro-American Association and helped get the first African American history course adopted into the college's curriculum. Soon after, in October of '66, he and Bobby Seale founded the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They decided that Seale would be the chairman and Newton would be the Minister of Defense. Many of the party's principles were inspired by Malcolm X and his views. The party believed that the black struggle for justice, violence, or the potential for violence may be necessary. The Black Panther Party, under the leadership of Newton, gained international support. This was most demonstrated when Newton was invited to visit China in 1970. He was welcomed enthusiastically by large crowds, holding up copies of quotations from Chairman Mao Zedong, as well as signs supporting the Black Panther Party and criticizing U.S. imperialism. After returning to the United States, Newton was tried for a variety of violent offenses such as assault and multiple murders. These charges resulted in him fleeing to Havana, Cuba to escape prosecution for 3 years. Upon his return, he stood trials for one more assault and murder that was acquitted of both charges. Compounding these challenges was the split that developed between Newton and Eldridge Cleaver in early '71 over the primary function of the party. Newton wanted the party to focus on serving African American communities, while Cleaver thought the focus should be on building relationships with international revolutionary movements. This rift resulted in the violence between the factions and deaths of several Black Panther Party members. In 1989, Newton was fatally shot in West Oakland by a member of the Black guerrilla family and drug dealer named Tyrone Robinson. Relations between the Black Panther Party and the Black guerrilla family had been strained for nearly 20 years prior to the incident. The murder occurred after Newton left a drug den in the neighborhood where Newton had once organized social programs. His last words were, "You can kill my body and you can take my life, but you can never kill my soul. My soul will live forever." Robinson then shot Newton twice in the face. Newton was buried at Evergreen Cemetery in Oakland, California. Robinson was convicted of the murder in 1991 and sentenced to 32 years to life in prison. But we also have other entries here. Britannica, there's an entry then talking about the Black Panther Party. Let's see what else. PBS biography, they talk about him on himself, his mother and father being a criminal on his name. But it's almost as if it's quotes he would have made himself. Yeah. Or actual quotes he would make himself, because here they do have by Huey P. Newton. So it's things he said and stuff. And then, of course, we have the Wikipedia article on it. So if you want to delve into the information a little deeper, yeah. He was apparently married twice, 4 children. I mean, I saw nothing really wrong with what he tried to do in trying to make better societies, better life, housing, food. These are the things we should be seeking to do for everybody, but the grossly wealthy don't care. They really don't. And the more I look at these movements, a lot of them, the great majority of them, they weren't asking for insane goals. They were like, look, we just believed as human beings, people should be housed, they should be fed, they should have a respectable life. So, yeah. And these kind of things are what's often called left wing. And it's part of the reason I am very much left wing. I think people have the right to have a home, the right to not have to go to bed food insecure. People should have the right to be educated. This is the left wing idea. Kindness and proper treatment to people. That's left wing. Yeah. This is the kind of stuff Huey Newton wanted. This is the kind of stuff MLK wanted. Now, Huey P. Newton is tied to more violent issues. He clearly had drug issues, violent behavior. But nothing that could fully actually truly stick. And so it's kind of, you have to take it with a grain of salt. Yes, you do know the history, you do know the backgrounds there, but nevertheless, with what he pushed for, with what he hoped to accomplish, it's clear he wanted people to have a better life. He was more willing to be physical because they believed, the whole party's name is the Black Panther Party for self-defense. So they had no problem with using self-defense as a mechanism. Because honestly, there's a whole thing I've read Dr. King's speeches and writings. He believed in nonviolent, peaceful protest. Again, Dr. King said it's not necessarily something he would agree with, but he understands why some people resort to it. Yeah. And Huey P. Newton was often considered the other side of that coin. You had people who tried to fight for peaceful change and everything, and boycotts and all kinds of stuff like that, such as Dr. King. Huey Newton's like, look, we won't change, we won't homes, we want food, we want voting rights, all this, but we aren't afraid to defend ourselves. Because remember, Jim Crow was still very real, and the need of many to protect themselves because of a history of groups like the KKK. Yeah. Who honestly are cowards. Yeah, let's get about 25 of us and team up on one or two people. Fucking cowards. Anyway, we'll go ahead and end this episode there. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting these links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.